John is speaker number 2. He'll be speaking from the Compact Communication Manual, project number 8. The title of his speech is Get Comfortable. Well, the project title is Get Comfortable with Visual Aids. And the subject of his speech is Taking Stock of Your Life and Happiness. And the title of his speech is Happiness Engineering. The objectives are to select visual aids that are appropriate for his message and for the audience, and use his visual aids correctly, with ease, and with confidence. A little bit about John. He's a husband and a father of 3. He works as a software engineer for Quest Software. He also spends much of his spare time working on his hobby startup called Fit for Green. John's been a Toastmaster since July of 2016. And he holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and a master's of business in administration. Please help me welcome this morning John's speaker. Nothing compared to my last name, right? I can't even say it.
Thank you very much. So welcome guests and fellow Toastmasters. Today I'm here to present about happiness engineering. It's a way to take stock in your life. So I'm an engineer, so I like to draw boxes around things. When you draw boxes around things, you can look at certain properties of those and understand them a little bit better. That's the approach I'm going to take. So the inspiration for this came up, this way of looking at my life and making sure I was on the right path, was from Martin Short. Martin Short did a really good interview one time about his life and how he goes through all these different categories of his life. And he takes stock in those periodically so he can see whether he's on track or not. And one thing he commented on, he was real busy that year working, so he really had a lot of time to spend with his friends. So he saw that category getting a little out of whack and figured he had the course correct on it. When you start at Toastmasters, you get up and you do your icebreaker, because they want to give you a presentation that you feel comfortable with. So the icebreaker is just to get up here and talk about yourself. So what I came up and as I talked about my world, the world of John Spirka, and what I talked about in my world was there's certain things that hold my world up. These are my categories. So my first category, and this probably I share with most of you, is my family. My family, my wife, and my kids. My second category is myself, where I take care of myself and I make sure I'm improving regularly. And this Toastmasters was part of that, part of making sure that I'm continually improving and growing myself. Then the last one was my career. And those are my big 3 pillars that I like to call my categories. So Martin Short's a little out there with 9, so I just consolidated mine down to 3. Now, what I looked at doing a long time ago, I learned this theory of flow. You probably know this theory. This is a flow theory is what's used for video games. So on the bottom, you'll see skills. Actually, it's covered up a little bit. But the bottom is skills. And with skills, over time, you will grow your skills. So as you do a certain thing over and over again, your skills will increase. And then on this one, they have the challenge from low to high, how challenging it is. And the theory here is that if you do something that's too challenging, you're going to get stressed, you're going to push up to anxiety, and probably bail on it, right? And the same thing with boredom. If you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and not challenge yourself in that category, you're going to get bored of it. So what you want to do is stay in here. And this is what we're called being in the zone. Like Kevin's a soccer player. So when you see the soccer player just killing it out there on the field, you're like, they're in the zone. Or the basketball player, like when you watch King James out there, just killing it, right? They're in the zone. They're totally into what they're doing. Right? It's like the perfect game. If you ever saw that golf game, they're so focused on what they're doing that they lose track of time. Now, if you look at Toastmasters, and we apply this theory to Toastmasters, P1 would be maybe when you start Toastmasters. Because you get up there and all you have to really do is talk about yourself. So it's a new skill, you're fairly new at it, but you're comfortable with the topic. And then what happens is you start to say, wow, I gotta worry about filler words. I actually have to use my hands when I'm talking. I have to inflect my voice, right? So you start thinking about all these things you have to do to improve when you're speaking. And that's when you can pull up here to the anxiety part. So what you have to do is pull yourself back. Now P3, the same way. If I get up there and I just speak every single day, like Spicer. Well, his are a little bit challenging every day. But if you get up there and you speak every day and you do the same thing and you don't challenge yourself further, you're going to push more into that boredom zone. So what you want to do is you want to keep increasing your level of challenge as you go forward, just like video game designers do. That's how they hook you on the video games, is they keep making it gradually harder as you increase your skill level. And that's the perfect video game design, is how they do that. So P1 again is the icebreaker. P2 is where you would start to get really stressed about all the things you have to learn. P3 is where you would get bored if you really didn't apply any of the new skills. And then P4 is back in the zone where you really want to be. So getting back to my pillars. My pillars are my family, and in my family you have my wife, my kids, and then my original family too. Everybody back home in New Jersey. For myself, I have the fitness and the diet were the big things I was focusing on. And then also education. So this is continuing education for me, is learning to public speak better. Other times I took classes and things like that. And then my career, I have Quest, and I have Fit for Green, which is my startup. And then I have here, I'm the VP of PR for Toastmasters. So this is a recent career, I guess you'd call it a career, and it's sort of a responsibility as a job. So I look at that also as part of the things I'm doing. Now, what I wanted to do is I want to take the last one, just career. I don't have time to go through all these today and lay them on that spectrum of flow that I showed you about. But this is what you can do with happiness engineering. Now that I took stock, I have all the main things that are my big items. Now what I can do is I can start to look at those. So if I look at Toastmasters, I'm very early on in Toastmasters. I feel like I'm still in the flow, but I'm pushing up to anxiety a little bit because part of my job is to get new members in, and we're low on membership. So that may be pushing up to anxiety, based on where I am in learning. I'm learning a lot of new things, and there's a lot to do. Now the second one is Fit for Green. And Fit for Green, I've been trying to figure out how do we move this forward? How do we get funding to actually make it a company? And that's been really challenging because of the markets we're in. So that's pushing up a little bit more into anxiety. So I'm a little sideways there on where we're going with the startup, just because that stage is really tough to bring it from a concept to where you're actually selling the product. And then the last one is Quest. At Quest, I've been here 17 years now. And what I've been able to do at Quest, which is great, is change my career every few years. So at 3 years, I was able to make adjustments. I've been at this place about 3 years now, so I'm talking to management about some adjustments in there. So the important thing here is to really realize you're not going too far into any one zone. You need to pull them back, or you need to punch out of it. Like a relationship too. I've been at stress in relationships, and I was like, maybe didn't pull the plug quick enough on some of them early on. Now, in summary, the first important part of happiness engineering is to really understand your pillars, understand what's important. The second one is to be proactive and assess, like Martin Short does, over and over. Make sure you check yourself on these things, especially the things that are important, because it's really easy to get sidetracked. And the third thing, think of your life like a video game designer does. How do you get in that zone? Especially with you guys in sales, you really got to focus on staying in that zone all the time so you don't get too far sideways in either direction. And lastly, and most importantly, in the words of Bobby McFerrin, don't worry, be happy. Thank you.